Is one of the 11 drop sites that was shut down by Governor Greg Abbott. It took us about 31 minutes to get here. It's where we met Peaches Sullivan.
So, for the Raiders who just came in, basically this is a correspondent who is testing the waters here to see how difficult it is to get from one point in Harris County, kind of in the outskirts of Harris County, to the one drop-off location for mail-in ballots in Harris County. So, just to give you a little bit more information, if you're not familiar, Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, did limit the total number of drop-off boxes for mail-in ballots, one per county. And so they're just right now CNN's doing a story to showcase the difficulty to get to this one single drop-off location in Harris County that has, is it 4.3 million people total in population? That might not be correct, but there are millions of people living in this county, and how it is how the struggle is to get to various points of this county to the singular drop-off location. So now that we've prefaced this, we're going to go back to it. And this gentleman just said that it took him 30 minutes to get to the fringe area of Harris County to this drop-off location.
Who was dropping off voter registration forms for nursing home residents.
People are still worried. Why would you risk having people come out even more when they don't have to, especially with the pre-existing conditions that they have?
This is a drive where you're going to see
4.7. Thank you. I think I said 4.3 million. Thank you for the clarification. My apologies. 4.7 million living in Harris County, Texas.
Almost like a slice of America. You're going to see a little bit of everything on this drive.
One drop-off location for absentee ballots.
Harris County into Energy Stadium, where this drop box location is. Of course, critics of the governor say this is really just a masquerade way of suppressing voter turnout, making it more difficult for voting populations in highly democratic towns like Houston and Austin
Can't nail down
to be able to safely submit their votes in the age of this COVID pandemic. The Texas governor says his decision will increase ballot security and help stop illegal voting, though there are no widespread problems with voter fraud. So this is the one Dropbox ballot site in
actually 4.713 million, down to the decimal. That's obviously a joke, but
governor's move to close down the ballot drop sites is an abuse of power.
To make it so that our voters who have disabilities, our elderly voters, have to drive over an hour, more than 50 miles in some cases, to drop off their mail ballot. It's unfair, it's prejudicial, and it's dangerous.
The drive took us about an hour and 8 minutes. So round trip, you're looking at about
an hour and 8 minutes. All right. Average wait times throughout the week have been less than an hour. Surprisingly, in my area, according to data I overlooked, I only found 2 locations with an excess of 1 hour. It sounds like you might not live in as populous an area in a large city, but then again, I'm not in Houston. Exactly. So the dynamics are going to be different depending on the population, depending on the options you have for voting, whether you have excess voting locations that would be considered vote centers that aren't your standard precincts, or if you have a drop-off, you have various drop-off locations for your mail-in ballots. All of these things will be different depending on your city. But as we're seeing here in Harris County, limited options, the bare minimum, in fact, one drop-off location per county, and this is going to be detrimental to voter outcome, especially if those with absentee ballots have no choice but to drive, and they're looking at about an hour drive just to drop off their ballots. This might not be a convenience for those living in the outskirts of Harris County, and could definitely impact total voter turnout who would otherwise gladly participate in this process.
Hours and 15 minutes, and quite honestly, it was an easy drive. We caught the traffic at a good time. It was actually relatively smooth sailing.
Okay, I don't like this. Showcasing the best case scenario, making it seem like just because your excursion was not as painful as you thought it would be does not mean that it's still not going to be incredibly difficult to be able to overcome this obstacle of driving over 2 hours round trip just to ensure that your vote is counted. Come on, CNN. Actually, it's CNN.
Bad traffic can get in this city.
Always undermining voter suppression.
And John, there have been 2 federal lawsuits filed in the last few days trying to change the governor's proclamation that was issued late last week. The governor says that he has actually expanded access to voting, and in some cases that's true. Early voting.
I just don't like that, like a backhanded, like preemptive vote shaming tactic. Like, hey, it wasn't so bad for me, so what's your excuse if you don't end up making it to the one drop-off slot in your county?
2 weeks to 3
you know what I'm
weeks
saying?
This year in the state of Texas, but the governor also says that this is a move that he says will ensure transparency
Hey, Paul,
at the
what's going
ballot
on?
box and also stop attempts at illegal voting. John?
Right. Again, you know, we have to control for the 0.00004% chance of voter fraud in this election. The fact that they weigh, it's almost as if these election officials weigh the possibility of voter fraud just as much as they do voting opportunities, which is insane, knowing that we do not have a high number of election fraud cases or voter fraud cases in this country, as evidenced by the work that the Heritage Foundation has done to encapsulate every single instance of voter fraud ever. And that outcome being incredibly low, it is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent. I know that's not really a thing, but still, really drive the point home that the fact that we are hearing election officials make it appear as though we have to be mindful of the possibility of voter fraud has inadvertently or by design led to high amounts or the propensity to engage in voter suppression by making it seem as though we must control for the possibility of fraud. This in turn has led to voter suppression tactics. Coincidence? I mean, I think not. But still, it is the fact that they are weaponizing the very few instances of voter fraud in this country to justify voter suppression tactics that needs to be called out. 0.0006 has no chance of being fraud as the last eight elections with more than 1 billion ballots cast in those. I messed up my data once again. I think I said 4%. Damn, I need to brush up on my data points. Chat. Don't even know the exact amount of residents in Harris County, Texas. Don't know the exact percentage of voter fraud in this country. My apologies. Cancel me. I don't deserve your support. Just kidding. I am memeing. I'm sorry. There are ways that I can work around this, not give you an absolute number, be a little general or vague in lieu of providing false information. I know better. Please don't leave. Republicans scream about voter fraud every time there's an election. It's nothing new, but there's never been the president echoing the possibility of voter fraud in this capacity in contemporary times, right? That is the fundamental difference. It's that Donald Trump has fanned the flames of a false narrative that has caused chaos. It has literally caused right-wing and white militants to rise up and take this vigilantist approach to ensure that we have free and fair elections in this country. Never mind the facts. Never mind the fact that what we really need to be worried about is how we are literally putting barriers. We are setting up barriers throughout our democratic process that makes it almost impossible to show up and cast your ballot in this country. That is the real issue that we should be addressing. But again, This president is not interested in ensuring a free and fair election. That is the antithesis of what he is attempting to do. In fact, he has proven that he will not even leave office. He will not accept the terms of this election if the outcome is Joe Biden is the winner. So yes, that being said, along with all of his inflammatory rhetoric about the danger of voter fraud, makes it seem as though he has been working preemptively to justify rigging the election, outright wholesale, before our very eyes, backed by a 6-3 Supreme Court that will rule in his favor, potentially purging as many absentee ballots as possible to ensure that the total votes counted give him the 270 electoral votes necessary for re-election. Donald Trump knows what he's doing whenever he talks about voter fraud and ballot harvesting. He is making it seem as though we have a real chance of seeing illegitimate voting in this country that might need to be countered with complete and total purging altogether. He is making it seem as though there is a possibility that we will have an unfair election in this process to try to set the tone as to why he will push for. And again, it's not something that a lot of people believe will happen. I know that I'm kind of putting myself in, I don't even know if I'm being conspiratorial at this point. I've been pretty vocal about how I feel Donald Trump is handling the election, the reason why he's using the rhetoric he's using to fan the flames of fear that this might be an unfair election this time around. It is because he needs to set the tone to be able to make it appear as though it is a legitimate process to question voter turnout if Joe Biden is the victor. And luckily, because he has a pretty nice chunk of sycophants who just regurgitate every single one of his talking points, for him, of course, not for us, they are going to stand idly by and not be able to read between the lines here that his Lord and Savior, their Lord and Savior, is outright rigging the election. Not like they would care anyway. It's not like Trump supporters are really in the business of caring about a democratic process that includes a free and fair election. Oh no. They don't care that Donald Trump's rigging this thing right here before our very eyes. We're not really ignorant to the fact that it seems as though there is a lot of rapport between Donald Trump and GOP senators and governors who are working together to find ways to undermine the integrity of our electoral process. Now, at this level, right, at the highest level possible, with a rather ambiguous statement, you might say, especially if you're not part of our regular echo chamber, you might say, well, how is that even possible? Where is the proof? Source? Here's the proof laid out, which is just one instance, right? This is a multifaceted approach throughout multiple states. And it's not just the direct relationship between Donald Trump and GOP leadership, it's also the Supreme Court, who are trying to find a way to undercount some absentee ballots that might come in after Election Day, even though they were postmarked the day of. The issue here is that you can make every effort to ensure that you drop off your absentee ballot at the post office, right? It can be postmarked, but if there is slowing down within the post office itself, that takes a longer time to sort the mail and get it to the right place to be counted. And then there's also some impediments to the process where it takes longer to be able to gather all of these absentee ballots once they are transferred from the post office to the location where they will then be counted, right? The voting the offices where they will be then counted. Then, of course, this can be this can be an impediment to getting the votes cast in a reasonable amount of time. And instead of working to try to eliminate these risks, GOP members banked on this happening by defunding the Postal Service to try to find some justification as to why this process would be slowed down. And then once there was a wrench thrown in the operations that would otherwise move ballots from point A to point B, the Supreme Court came in Wisconsin and said, we are now going to rule that any ballots not received by election day, 7 p.m., despite the fact that they have been postmarked before November 3rd, will no longer count. So this is how we're seeing a concerted effort by various leaders within the GOP that are working to try to ensure that Donald Trump seeks re-election, right? Sorry, I'm chat, I'm buffering, chat. And, you're not able to make these connections. You might have a difficult time making these connections. You have to dig below the surface. You have to read between the lines. You have to infer from these conversations and these rulings and these proceedings to really tie together the cohesive underlying message here that yes, the Republicans are 100% trying to rig this election preemptively. Why else? How else would this be such a seemingly coordinated effort? A coordinated effort from all facets of government, from leadership, not only in Congress, but from a bureaucratic perspective with the United States Postal Service under DeJoy, gutting operational costs that have a direct relationship to the likelihood that mail would be received or could be lost because of the major changes that they made on that front. Limiting that alongside with slowing down the mail, losing the confidence that the absentee ballots will be received on time through your regular process of dropping it off in the mail. Then you have a limitation of how many mail drop-off locations for your mail-in ballots. That will also be an impediment. If you are in, say, Harris County, Texas, you have to drive over an hour to drop off your absentee ballot, feeling as though you don't have the confidence in the United States Postal Service to drop off your ballot because there's no guarantee that it will be delivered to this location where it'll be counted on time. You see how this all affects our own confidence in our election process? And this is how it works. You also have the fake Republican boxes like in California. Yes. You also have the legitimate boxes going up in flames. You see, there's plenty of ways that we're seeing our own election processes tampered with, right? But the thing about the drop off locations for the absentee ballots going up in flames, this is actually going to potentially help Trump. This is going to help Trump. This is going to be a supplemental supplemental to his rhetoric that we have to be mindful of the threat of tampering at an individual level, right? Voter fraud is something that we need to be mindful of. And so pointing to these examples of an individual or a lone wolf acting that seems like an isolated incident is something that he can draw from, or that might be useful for him to solidify why it is important to have poll watchers, or maybe we have some reason to suspect that absentee ballots might need to be purged from the total voter turnout. All of these things, I think, make it difficult to just completely throw your full confidence in our processes. But how they will unfold in the next few days, that'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few days.